I hope I'm in frame. Am I? Here, let's test it. New plan. I'm gonna sit like this, and it's gonna hurt a little, but not too much. Yeah. Hello. Camera that I'm talking to. Yeah. I thought I would talk about the CDs I own, because that's one of the few things I find interesting, and I'd like to make some videos on this YouTube channel about literally anything that I want. So I just thought this is a very easy thing to talk about for me, so I thought I'd do it. So, yeah, so these aren't in any particular order, and also these aren't necessarily my favorite albums. My favorite album of all time, The Black Parade, I own on CD. Quite a few, if I were to do my top 10 albums ranking, I actually don't think any of these would make, well, maybe the Eminem Show by, well, Guess. Other than that, I don't think any of these would be my... Oh, Swan Songs by Hollywood and Dead, that's also definitely up there. But, yeah, that's about it, as far as which ones of these would be in my top 10s of all time. But, which I'm not necessarily saying I know that off the top of my head, but I just know that, you should, look, making a top 100 albums list, making a ranking of an album, of all of albums you like, is very difficult, okay? I'm gonna do it, and I'm not gonna make a video about it. I'll probably put it on a Google Doc, and then publish the Google Doc through like a link or something. You know, if I ever finish that. So like in like a year, I'll edit this video and I'll put it in the description or something. But until then, this is what you get. And I think this is actually far more interesting because this shows that there's a degree of experience in these, you know what I mean? I can listen to any album I want on Spotify and do that. But with this, it's like, these are the albums that I purchased and I got them all from different places. There's stories to these beyond just the album themselves. So the first one I have is the last one I purchased. I don't know what this order is at all, but this one was the last one I had on the shelf. It's the soundtrack to Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 1992 Coppola film, starring Winona Ryder and Gary Oldman. It's personally my favorite movie of all time. Came with a little booklet and everything. I got this at a used bookstore in Santa Monica. I can't remember what it was called, but it kind of felt like a tech store. Like, it didn't really feel like, it didn't feel warm like a bookstore, to be honest. But it was a very good used bookstore. It had a very extensive and useful thing, and I haven't seen this in person before, so I purchased it for $8.53. So, yeah. Actually, I really do enjoy the soundtrack. I didn't just get it because I like the movie, and because I like the books. I like the books quite a lot, as you can see by various Dracula copies. I think it's a very powerful soundtrack. I quite like it. I like the use of brass in it and just the very deep epic. It's very metal, you know. I like that. I like that it's very metal. So there you have it. Up next is My Chemical Romance's The Black Parade. This is my favorite album of all time, officially. I think this is MCR's best record, personally. Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge is a great album, for sure. But to me, it doesn't really have this, like, legacy that this one will have, and it doesn't have the... Like, this came out a classic. Like, this was a classic from the moment it came out. I don't know if I can necessarily say the same for Three Cheers. I like how theatrical it is. I like how big it is. I like that it is still a concept album, and while it does have a narrative, I don't really, I like the kind of concept albums where it's more like every song... I do love story concept albums, that's not what I'm trying to say, but I like the kind of concept album, which is a rarer kind in my opinion, where every song sort of depicts a different scene among the same theme. And I think that the narrative that he created for this, he being Gerard Way, was more so a way to attach them together so that people could still appreciate it as a narrative, if they enjoy narrative concept albums. But ultimately, I think the main purpose is more so the individual scenes. I mean, I don't really listen to this and I picture Dead and Cancer and Mama and Sleep to all be from the same character's voice, right? So, yeah, that's that. This one's not even opened. I don't have a CD player. I know that makes me sound really pretentious to have a CD collection on a CD player. I haven't gotten one yet, okay? Death of a Bachelor by Panic at the Disco. I know, Brandon Urie, he's gross and annoying, whatever. I agree, but I feel like this gets a bad rep by a lot of people, but I think it's a pretty good album. I understand if you're, like, not into traditional pop, though. Like, if you're not into, like, swing music and stuff like that, which I don't expect most Panic at the Disco, well, now I do, but, you know, prior to this, most Panic at the Disco fans were mainly, like, actual pop fans. And there's plenty of actual pop on here. Victoria, I don't think there's any skips on here. Maybe Hallelujah. I'm not really a fan of Hallelujah, but for the most, LA Devotee, or no, that's not what I thought it was. Never mind. I was thinking of Dying in LA. Dying in LA is a bit sappy to me, but on the whole, I think this is a pretty decent album. I don't know why it gets such a bad rap. What is this? The Scene is Dead by Rob Scallon. I was a Patreon supporter of his, and I got this in the mail. And I do remember enjoying it, but I honestly can't say that I've listened to it much, to be honest, but I quite enjoy the packaging. I think that this is probably considered more affordable packaging, because it's like, not considered, I imagine this is more affordable packaging because it's considered, like, weaker or whatever. I kind of prefer it, to be honest, because it gives this all-over sort of feel, like there's no borders on the art. Yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Ooh, this is a good one. I don't remember purchasing this. That's fantastic that I own it. I love that. This is just all around an amazing, epic little record. I don't even know how to explain. When he made it, he said in interviews that it was supposed to be, you know, campy, and it was supposed to be over the top and just way too intense for pop music. And that was the intention, that it was supposed to be camp. And as a metalhead, I think that there's a lot to appreciate here, though, because compositionally it has quite a lot in common with the intensity and fast speed and long drawn-out-ness of heavy metal, of the main purpose of it. So, yeah, I think this is a very, I don't know. I just love this album, that's all. Sorry, I got, like, enamored. Gossip by Sleeping with Sirens. You know, this is one of their I don't think Sleeping with Sirens has made a bad album, but if I were to rank them, this probably would be my least favorite, but I still love this record. I mean, honestly, every track on here is, like, pretty good. I can't say I know how most of them go, but I remember when I listened to it, I was like, this is fantastic, and quite a few of these songs I still listen to often. Gossip, Empire to Ashes, Trouble, Closer. Legends was kind of cheesy, to be honest, but I think it was an Olympics song, so that's fine, that's what it's supposed to be. It's a funny story with this one because I wanted this at Target. It came out right before, it was on the shelves at Target a week early, and I tried to purchase it. The computer, like, I tried to purchase it early and, like, sneak it past them, but the computer there said no, that I couldn't. So then I guess my dad felt bad, and he went and bought it for me anyway. And in retrospect, the only reason I wanted it on CD, I think, was just to say that I got it early. But I am glad I have it. That's not to say, like, my dad wasted his money. It's not a bad album at all, truly. I think a lot of people got sick and tired of, like, I think a lot of people are just mean about albums not exploring their main sound anymore. Who cares? I don't know what this is, I must confess. I've never listened to it, and it's all in French. I don't speak French. I'm not going to embarrass myself by attempting to pronounce that. But my aunt lives in France, and she, my aunt lives in France, and she decided, because I'm a big fan of music, that she would get me 2 CDs, one that my cousin picked out, and one that, I guess he's my uncle. Yeah, the person married to your aunt is your uncle. Yeah. Yeah. I have listened to this one. I have not listened to this one. No offense to my French uncle. This one's kind of interesting. It's kind of like French Lil Peep. It's a group called Columbine, which, you know, won't fly over too well in America. You know, in France. I imagine who cares. You know, I'm gonna start a band called the Notre Dame Fire and see how they feel about that. The reason I had listened to this one was because I was going to see my cousin. I haven't seen my uncle in like 10 years, but I was going to see my cousin, and I was like super anxious that she was gonna be like, "Hey, have you listened to that album yet? That album I gifted you?" And I have to be like, no. When I asked her about it, she was like, "Oh yeah, I don't like that one." So there's that. Blurry Face by 21 Pilots. I don't remember where I bought this, but there's scratches all on the back. I think I just got this at the bookstore. I don't know how it got scratched. I don't really care. 21 Pilots. I went through a 21 Pilots moment. I was never like a super fan or anything like that. Like, I never actually dressed like them or like did their weird stuff. If you did that, whatever. Don't be ashamed of it. And then I went through a phase where I like hated them. I was like, I'm so sick and tired of them. And I think the reason why is because I just don't like Tyler Joseph. I think he's annoying and pretentious. But I think this is a good album. Like, I've come around. I've stopped being, I got the stick out of my ass, but I also stopped trying to like things just because MCR fans like them. Like, I think I was trying to be emo, like this was me trying to get an emo card. I don't fucking need an emo card. Fuck you, I do what I want. I think Heavy Dirty Soul, particularly, is their best song that this band has ever made. My cousin's like my other cousin, is like a super huge fucking fan of these guys too. But this was not a gift from her. But, I'm just thinking that's funny. What else is a good song on here? Fairly Local is really fucking good. I think Ride is good. Usually when people complain about 21 Pilots, like, being annoying, Ride is one of the songs they mention. I like it. And I also really like Heathens. I know a lot of 21 Pilots fans don't even like Heathens. I like Heathens. Starboy. This is the only Weeknd album I've listened to front to back, so I can't make any judgments as far as if it's my favorite of his or my least favorite or whatever. From what I've heard of the other albums, this is definitely his catchiest. Like, it's really just a very catchy, good album, and the melodies and the riffs in it are very, like, basic and simple and just correct. You know what I mean? Like, you know when you listen to an album and you're like, oh, that's how that song is supposed to sound. Like, all of these are, like, they do it right. They do what it's supposed to sound like. Executioners. I got this one at Amoeba. It's a little reference to the Public Enemy album art. Obviously I discovered this because of Mike Shinoda, but these guys just do really cool fucking, you know, head nodding kind of stuff. Like, it's very easy to kind of like just get lost in their music. And what it was I wasn't expecting them to have this at Enema. This doesn't seem like the sort of thing you would find laying around anywhere. Like, I imagine you'd have to search for this to find it. So the fact that it was there, I was like, I need to get this. Yeah, I think this might be the one that it's on, in fact. Is it? It's going down? Where is it? There it is. It's number 11. There is 21 tracks on here. That is amazing. I feel like more albums need to be, like, fucking long. There's too many sub-hour albums. On the same day that I got that album, I bought this one. A real classic. God, I also just love this album. I think that Floodland is a better album overall. And they're like, it's interesting because you can listen to this, you can listen to Floodland, and you can see how they're the same, like in style and in melodies and just atmosphere. But it's just funny because this is like a very dark punk album, you know. I'd argue that for the time, it would be called hardcore. I mean, hardcore now is mostly like slow, like you know, kind of groovy, like dark sort of stuff, or like angry, you know. But this is just dark and horrid. But at the same time, you know, you can listen to this and you can listen to Floodland and you can find a lot of similarities. And I know it's not like a hot take because they're both considered like gothic icons, but I suppose the hot take in that is that they are definitely not the same genre, you know, but they're the same theme, they're the same style, but they're not the same genre. And I suppose that's what's fascinating to me about this sort of classic goth style, is that many of these bands were absolutely different genres. It was that style, it was the fact that they all had the same sort of melodies and the same sort of sensibilities that made them the same. And I guess this is where the hot take also comes in, is that I would argue Typo Negative is a legitimate goth band for that. Many people argue that you cannot be goth and metal. Typo Negative did it. I don't think Marilyn Manson is goth. I don't think that Nine Inch Nails is goth. I definitely call those bands gothic. I would not call them goth. So yeah, that's that on that. Invincible, and I also have 9 Lives. I also got this on the same trip that I got Executioners and Only Theater of Pain. I think there's a brief period where when I would go buy CDs, I would try to buy the 3 or 4 most just unrelated across the spectrum sound. I think halfway to my, like, you know, half for my own amusement, because, you know, I think it's very funny to purchase those 3 things together, but also because I think I wanted to look interesting, which, fuck you, that's a fine thing to do. I want to look interesting. Yeah, this is a very good album. The guy himself is quite a little douchebag, but I don't know how much he's stuck with that. He hasn't been active on Twitter since, I think, 9/11 of, like, 2017, and then he got arrested. But yeah, this was his first album, his first solo album after getting kicked out of Hollywood Undead. It has features from Jeffree Star and Ronnie Radke, so, you know. And then this was the follow-up album. I anticipated this one, I think this came out 4 years later, 5 years later. I had anticipated this one for 3 years before it came out. 2 years before it came out. Some of these tracks are really fucking good. I think Bad Attitude is the best one on here. And then there's on the bonus track, which aren't on here, but they're on Spotify, the song Famous featuring his hype man Gadget is really good. So yeah, I like those albums a lot. I don't, you know, Swan Songs by Hollywood Undead. This might be my favorite album of theirs. This one or Day of the Dead. But this was when Deuce was the producer. So if you like those ones, obviously if you like those, you can listen to this. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the order the songs are in. I made a Spotify playlist with all the songs in it, but in a different order. And I'm sorry to disappoint, but number 5 was not number 5. I think it was number 7. Because I just thought that the order that they were in wasn't, I suppose, emotional, or like, it didn't make sense in like a good order. This was produced by Danny Lohner. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I didn't know that. I think this might be the most, honestly, LA album of all time. Like, who cares about Red Hot Chili Peppers? Who cares about these bands that are like, oh, I love LA, I went to LA and did this stuff. This album is like, I fucking love LA, but like, there's also like a lot of like homeless people and violence and stuff like that. So it's very much talking about like, yeah, let's have a party, but then also be like in its feelings a bit. I like that because I feel like a lot of the time albums that are, or like musicians that make happy, fun music oftentimes act as though they are above songs about your feelings, and then, you know, people who make songs about their feelings often act as if they are above or better than, or like more intelligent than party songs. And what I like about Hollywood Undead is that they make both. They're here to have like a good, fun time with bitches and brew, but they're also here to talk about their fifis, to talk about depression and suicidality, and to talk about, I guess, gang violence. They're not in any gangs, I don't believe so. But they, you know, they make very good drama in the stories that they tell. They tell a lot of stories that are just on the backdrop of LA, and I think this album, more than any other, is on the backdrop of LA. I Prevail's first record. I don't remember purchasing this. I might have bought this at the bookstore as well. And there's a couple really good songs on here, but there's a couple that are very generic. But this is an amazing fucking record. This is their second album, I think. Trauma. I like this because it came in this little booklet, so the art is actually just like neon graphics, and then you put it in there and it's part of this glowing thing that this character in the woods is, I suppose, worshipping. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that this album is just very fucking good. It's very catchy, and it's very poppy. I like when metalcore is still equally as heavy as it is poppy. I like when it's not afraid to do that. And this definitely wasn't afraid. I mean, this is a band that got famous for covering Taylor Swift, right? So that's not necessarily a new thing for them. But I like the nu metal influence on this. A lot of metalcore fans, I think, just don't like music that doesn't have breakdowns in it, which is fine. But, you know, I personally enjoy things artistically, so it's like kind of hard. That sounded so pretentious. Let's see what else is here. The Forbidden Planet soundtrack. I'm not a fan of this movie, to be honest. I think that it is very awkward in the way that the male characters seem to, like, convince this woman to give them, like, favors just because she's never met a human being before. And it's not super compelling storytelling. Like, it's not super fascinating. Oh, there's a little crack in it. But the main character, or not main character, why did I say that? But the little guy, the little robot, is adorable. And the soundtrack is, I think, really good. Because it's kind of like this weird little... It's like, for one thing, a pretty historical marker in electronic music, because when the movie came out, I believe, like, the Film Guild or something like that said that because it was electronic, they couldn't count it as music necessarily, so they couldn't write music by, they had to write like electronic textures or something. Oh, this is another one that's probably in my top 10s. Enema of the State. This is just a very good and well thought out album. If you just want to have a good time, but also a little bit of a sensitive time. And it's just a really fun thing to, like, drive around. I really like listening to songs from this album whenever I'm down in, like, Burbank or something, because Burbank hasn't really changed its appearance since this album was on the radio. And so it just feels right to listen to Blink-182 in Burbank. I forget where I purchased this. I think I got this... I might have gotten this at the bookstore. The Eminem Show. I think there's a weird thing where people, where progressives are like, saying like Eminem, you know, represents a sort of unintelligent and outdated thing. And I definitely think that aspects of him are outdated. Every piece of art is outdated in some regard. But this album is very political and very anti-Bush and very anti-whatever, as far as having the government control art, having all sorts of stuff. Like, it's unashamedly political at a time where there wasn't... This was during Bush's first term, post 9/11, and so there were a lot of... Uh-oh. You know, I think a lot of people were big fans of America, and so right after 9/11 there was a sort of American identity crisis. So for him to make a song that's just a huge fuck you, to make an album that is in large part a huge fuck you to America and America's celebrity culture within a year of 9/11, I think is pretty ambitious. And then finally in the list, once again I don't know why it's in this order, we have Hidden History of the Human Race by Blood Incantation. I'm trying to remember when this came out, I think 2019? This was the last copy that they had at Enema, and I bought it because it's really fucking good. Yeah, it's one of my favorite album arts too, though the art itself is from like the 70s. Tracks on here are pretty damn long, but I like that, and it's very easy to like get into and remember how it goes. A lot of time, like some of my favorite death metal songs, I don't think I could tell you how they go off the top of my head. I could just remember that I enjoy them when they're playing. But these ones, there's a lot of riffs in here that I genuinely could tell you how they go off the top of my head. Like that's how that one goes. And then second track has a part that goes or something like that. But they are still, but like especially when this came out, they were like a huge talk on like the sort of like band camp metal side of things. Yeah, I just think this is a very amazing death metal record. And if you are into sort of, I don't want to say melodic death metal because that's a genre, and I don't think it's necessarily that melodic, but okay. If you like death metal where you can definitely recognize melodies, this is a good one. And I like that for a metal band it's science fiction theme. For a death metal band, it's science fiction theme instead of being like horror themed, which isn't very common. That's not to say that I don't like the horror themed stuff. I love Cannibal Corpse. This just adds a new sort of aesthetic to it. And when you listen to it, you're like, oh, I can see the connection. I can see how this fits in with this. I think stuff like this is just so comforting. Like this kind of album, this kind of art. This is not about the album anymore, but just you know, very broad science fiction landscapes. Like where like you can like see for fucking ever in the thing, where like you just feel it. Everything in it is so small by comparison to its own landscape, and yeah. The music material of this album was felt by Blood Incantation. These transmissions were received from summer 2013 through winter 2018. This album is dedicated to all people who feel obliged to space. Transmissions received? I mean, that's how long they recorded this for? There's only 4 tracks on here. It took them 5 years? Well, anyway, that's that. I got a couple other things here, but like, they're unimportant. So, oh God, my back. Oh God. Oh.